Scar is an outright loser. He believes in concepts such as toxic masculinity, and he doesn't have a drop of testosterone inside of his body. An embarrassing man. He cowers during times of chaos and gets dominated by other men and chooses to get bitter rather than better from his setbacks. He is also arrogant and close-minded. But then there's Mufasa. Mufasa realizes the importance of concepts such as masculinity and takes ultimate responsibility and drastic action, especially when things go wrong. Damn, bro, this is not the day for me to be able to be doing this, bro. He inspires unity amongst his people and leaves behind a great legacy for his descendants. He communicates and inspires. He's innovative, accountable, and decisive. We can always trust in a man like Mufasa to be able to get the job done. You know, if there was one king who I felt like embodied a lot of these principles of Mufasa, the ultimate man that we want to be in African history, was Shaka Zulu. The man, the myth, the legend. His story is kind of an interesting one, and I think one of the lessons that we can really take away from it is concepts like leadership, masculinity, and etc. He innovated weapons such as the short spear and created a famous envelopment tactic called the bullhorns tactic. All of these things in his efforts would eventually help his people fight against the British in the famous Anglo-Zulu War that would happen a few decades later after Shaka Zulu's death. And he's just one of the many living examples of how one person could have so much influence, and positive influence at that. Some historians even call this man the Black Napoleon. In his early life, he was born to a Zulu king as a bastard child and sent away to go live with a neighboring tribe, specifically the tribe of his mother. In his childhood, as he was raised under some of these neighboring clans, he served as a warrior, specifically under Job and Dingaswayo, who was a respected warrior, a chief, and recognized Shaka's potential. This chief, while Shaka was under him, would nurture Shaka's military talents and eventually put him in charge of his own regiment, allowing Shaka to develop innovative tactics and strategies. But unfortunately, however, this tribal warrior chief, Disingwayo, would eventually be killed by a king from a neighboring people by the name of Nkosi Zuide. I don't know if I could pronounce that right. Resulting in a gruesome encounter that Shaka had with his mother. Basically, he killed her. He literally lit up the house on fire Nkosi's mom was in. The way that this guy did it, bro. Apparently he let the hyenas inside of the huts, locked the king's mom in there, and then let the hyenas eat her, and then in the next morning he burned it down. He burned down the hut. Brutal, bro. Eventually, he would engage in more battles with that king and his armies, and would eventually emerge victorious in a battle against these people near a place called Pongola, demonstrating his military prowess and innovative strategy. After this, he started to become very famous for a short stabbing spear, which he actually customized for deadly efficiency, and eventually also introducing tactics such as the bullhorns technique, which would devastate his enemies. And a lot of his early years were marked by the struggles to gain influence and a good reputation, but his innovativeness and tactics eventually laid the foundation for what would make him a significant historical figure in African history. His influence amongst the Zulu people grew as his ideas spread, particularly emphasizing the importance of a kind of military conquering culture, and he established a hegemony based on military might, incorporating things like diplomacy and patronage to bring his neighboring chieftains under his influence without direct confrontation. He also made some strategic alliances with neighboring clans and neighboring leaders, which strengthened his positions and allowed him to resist more hostile neighbors and tribes. However, his death was a really interesting one. It really was a kind of classic Mufasa versus Scar Lion King story, because he was actually killed by both of his brothers. His assassination occurred sometime around 1828 in the month of September. The reason why he was assassinated was because shortly a time before, his mother died and he had some erratic behavior apparently. This guy was spurring out, bro. He wouldn't allow people to plant crops after his mother died, and wouldn't allow women to be pregnant, and if they were, they would be executed or exiled. Right, it's one of those two. So after he was killed by his brothers, they dumped his body in some random place, patched it up with mud, and his actual burial place is still unknown to this day. His brothers would eventually take over what was his kingdom and take control of the power, but they struggled to create unity amongst the neighboring people and tribes all under the Zulu kingdom. But Shaka Zulu's legacy hasn't been forgotten, and his revolutionary tactics helped the Zulus in their famous battles in the Anglo-Zulu War that happened a few decades after Shaka Shaka Zulu's death. And you know, the weird thing, I think Shaka Zulu's story is one of the many stories in African history where it's like not really rags to riches, but kind of the struggle that a lot of us go through when it comes to like just gaining things like status, you know, all the like fundamental core human desires. And I think it's really cool to like take from his story and use that as something to like inspire yourself in your own life. I think a lot of the times we get caught up in trying to obsess over the materialistic things of these ancient people, especially in Africa, because like with African history there's kind of like a big obsession with kingdoms and states and empires, because I think there's like a inferiority complex, or like we have to prove something to everyone else type of thing. So people obsess over like buildings and certain things like that. But I think looking at somebody's story like Shaka Zulu's, I think you really have to appreciate his story and like his work, his influence, what exactly he did. And I think that's like a better way to look at history and to look at historical figures, to be inspired from the stories instead of trying to appropriate the accomplishments of people, which you could still be proud of the accomplishments, but I'm saying to be inspired by their story, I think it's a lot better and it's a lot more healthier. It's a much better way to go about history. But at the same time, like you just have to understand where people are coming from at the same time too. So I don't really blame people for wanting to connect themselves to like kingdoms or like have material things, but I still believe just learning about somebody's story is a much better way to go about things. But yeah, with that being said, also by the way, if you want to learn more about African history, historical figures, and learn about it in a much more healthier way with more accurate and reliable information, join the Anthropology Africa School. It's the first link in the description. It's basically an online community where I upload a bunch of courses, talk with you guys, and let you guys know. And we discuss things all about African history, anthropology, historical figures, and etc. So if you're interested in that, first link in the bio. I'm almost finished with my East African genetic history course. Damn, bro, more flexing. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like I need to improve on my storytelling techniques or abilities or skill, because I feel like whenever I tell stories, I feel like I disappoint. But like thanks to editing, if it sounds half decent in the video, it's because we've cut out a lot of stuff that would have made me look like an embarrassment. Okay, like I've figured this out, but yeah, I really need to like focus. I need to hone in on that skill. So yeah, I mean, rate my storytelling 1 out of 10 and tell me what I can improve on, and maybe in future videos I'll try to like take the advice, you know. But yeah, with that being said, peace out, bro. Subscribe and like, because we need it.